Okay, so let's share the screen. So we learned today about how to kasher dishes, and not like most classes, I didn't bring here many sources. I decided just to bring the actual and practical halacha of how to kasher dishes. So we'll start from the sources of just the basic of how do we get to the idea of kashering dishes, and then we'll go by practical things of how to kasher it. Unfortunately, today my grandfather passed away, partly from corona, so this class will be Leilu Nishmat, my grandfather, Meir Ben Ephraim. So how do we make dishes kosher? How do we kasher dishes? Let's go over. And we'll talk about a few dishes: oven, microwaves, pots, pans, and different cutlery. And if you have any specific dishes, so after you can add them, and we'll try to give them a solution. I'll say now most of the dishes we can kasher. As we go through the class, we'll see that some dishes we can't kasher. So the terms we will learn, the main term, the basic term we'll learn today is what we call keval o kach polto. We'll explain it in just a moment. And other terms of how to kasher, kashering methods, we'll learn about libun kal, hag'ala, irui, and shtifa, or echitza, it's the same thing. And I mentioned those names from the most severe way to kasher until the most easier way to kasher. So libun is the strongest way to kasher dishes. And we'll go very soon and explain them. But let's start from the pasuk. Hey, how do it all get to the idea of kashering dishes, and where does it come from? In Sefer Bamidbar, since I'm sure all of us are familiar with the Chumash, so the Torah tells us a story about the war against the Midianites, against Midian, and the Israeli nation won. They came back with many dishes and pots and cutlery and all sorts of other vessels. And the Torah tells us what to do with what we took. And since I think everyone here understands Hebrew, we'll read the Hebrew and skip the English. So the Torah says, "Ach et hazahav et hakesef et hanechoshet et habarzel et habdil ve'et ha'ofaret." And we can see that the Torah differentiates between different kinds of things. All of the things we mentioned here are made out of metal. And the common thing about them is you can heat them up. As the Torah continues, "Kol davar asher yavo ba'esh ta'aviru ba'esh ve'taher." We have here actually two topics. One topic is kashering, or passing it through the fire, and that's our topic for today. And the topic for next week, actually the last topic in this series, is toiveling dishes, how to toivel dishes. So that's the middle of the pasuk, that we'll discuss next week. Bezrat Hashem. So we see the first method of kashering is by fire with heat, and the second method of kashering mentioned in the pasuk is v'chol asher lo ya'avor ba'esh, anything that cannot stand fire, ta'aviru b'mayim, you should pass through water. So we see it in the pasuk two methods. And the Gemara learns, it's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, the Mishnah, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. At Pesachim, it's mentioned in a few places. We'll read the Mishnah and explain it. We won't read all the English. And the Mishnah quotes, "Halokech kli tashmish min ha'aved kochavim." So someone buys food vessels from a non-Jewish person, and they aren't new. Et shedarko yatbil, things which are used only with cold water, so he rinses them out with cold water. Lehageil, something called hagala, and we'll explain it deeper later, but it talks about warm water or warm liquids. Yagil. Yelaben ba'or, to burn with fire, to make white with fire. Yelaben ba'or, he should put them in the fire. And the Gemara the Mishnah, brings a few examples for different dishes, different cutlery. Hashiput ve'askela, which is a spit or a grill, okay? Melabnan ba'ur, here we have to pass them through the fire. They have to heat them until they become white hot. And hasakin, a knife, you polish it and it is called pure, it's clean. So a knife, if we don't use it in hot things, it might just have all sorts of oils or fat stuck to the outside, and that's why we have to polish it, and that's clean. And we can see here from the Mishnah that the basic idea that different cutlery, depending on what we use them for, that's the way of how we kasher it. And that brings us to the very, very known halacha, also mentioned in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, kevol'o kach polto. Okay, the same way it absorbs, that will be the method of kashering it. Okay, so I took here, if you can see the picture, I took the logo of, I think it's a burger. I don't think it's a kosher place, but it's in and out. So the same way it comes in, that is the way we will bring it out. Yes, that's in and out. That's the basic halacha in kashering. If you want to know halacha about kashering, that's the basic halacha in kashering. The way it absorbs the taste, that's the way we clean it. Okay, and before we go into the actual examples and explaining different categories, there's two halachot we should know. We will see 4 categories. In each category, usually we don't do like subcategories, and we'll see it in a moment. And we're stringent after minority, and also that we'll explain in just a moment. Okay, so let's go to the first halacha categories. Instead of reading it, let's just explain it. And let's say I have, we'll soon discuss something of libun. I have a grill. Okay, I have 2 grills. Both of them are used on a fire without any liquids. And as we'll learn in about 5 minutes, both of them need to be kashered by libun. But those 2 grills are used in 2 different ways. One of those grills is used for smoking. And if you use Fahrenheit, so the maximum heat usually will be around 250, depending on how you smoke. And the other one is used for a normal grill. It can get reached up to 450, 500 sometimes, depending on how you grill it. Since both of them is grills, both of them touch the food with heat, and there's a straight connection between the grill and the food, without any liquids in between, we view both of them as one category, and both of them will be kashered in one way. Okay, the same way, according to many authorities. Some rabbis argue, and they're more lenient, and they say that if we go according to the rule of kebol or kach polto, so we can also do subcategories. And in each category, I can say, wait, that was very hot, that was a bit hot, so I can differentiate inside the same category. According to many rabbis, we don't differentiate between the category, inside the category, and we don't make subcategories. As soon as something needs libun, it needs libun, and we go on the most strongest way of libun. But it's important to know the argument. And for some dishes, like I think we'll get later on today, which is the actual question which I received today, we use this halacha. We use this halacha or this argument, and again, there's an argument: do we differentiate the temperature inside each category? Or we say that one option is yes, we differentiate temperatures inside the same category, and if we have 2 different vessels or dishes that we use in different temperatures, the kashering them will be in different temperatures. And the other opinion says, as soon as we get to take a category, we just kasher it in the same way. In the most, it could be another example. Could be a ladle of soup. Okay, a ladle of soup is placed inside a boiling pot of a soup, but usually the soup isn't on the fire. We take it off the fire, off the flame, or off the electricity, or whatever it is. Okay, so the ladle is placed inside the boiling pot of soup, but it's not really on the fire. It's not really boiling. Okay, do we need to kasher it in boiling water, or does the water need to be 212 degrees, or can the water be 200 degrees? Okay, that's the same argument we have, and we try to go according to the more machmer shita, to take the more stringent opinion, and in some cases we can be more lenient, and we'll see a very good example towards the end of the class. That's the first halacha before we go to practical. And the second halacha, what about minority use? And let's say I have, it's a very practical for Pesach. Let's say I have a fork. I'm kashering my cutlery, and usually I do not eat my food when it is boiling hot. Okay, I try for weird reasons. I try not to eat my food when it's too hot. But sometimes, so my fork usually will not touch pasta or lasagna, which is boiling hot. But sometimes, every now and then, when I'll take a fork and use it to mix up something which is on the fire, on the flame. How do we kasher it? Do we go according to the usual way of using this fork, and we'll just kasher it in a simple way of water, or maybe even rinsing it? Or Do we say since sometimes we use this dishes, we use this cutlery in a more serious way of absorbing, so also kashering it will be in a more serious way of absorbing. And this machloket is relevant mainly for Pesach, okay, mainly for Pesach. For the day, usually day it's not so relevant. I'll explain in a moment. According to Shulchan Aruch, like many other cases, he's more lenient, and he says we go by the usual way of using, and the Rama is more stringent, and he says we go according to even the minority, way of using this cutlery. For the day, usually this argument isn't so practical, because for Pesach, every day we use the fork for chametz. Okay, every day we use the fork for chametz, and we need to kasher it for chametz. So the question is, how do we kasher this fork from chametz? And we say we go by the normal way of using chametz. Okay, in other words, we need to kasher the cutlery from the thing it was used in a normal way. In the main kashering questions we have in the kitchen are usually between meat and milk, and the method of kashering will be the same method it became treif. Okay, so the same method it became treif, that will be the way we will kasher this thing. For example, let's say I have a grill, or I have a grill, okay, and usually grill needs libun, okay. It became treif, not on the fire, it became treif because I poured on it by accident boiling milk, okay, it wasn't on the fire. Obviously, this grill do not need to kasher on hot fire and make it white or make it red. Okay, we kasher things the same way they became treif. So usually this argument isn't relevant, but for Pesach, and if some of you kasher your dishes for Pesach, so this argument becomes very relevant. Up to now it's a halachot, and now we can go into explaining each term of kashering and how do we kasher each one and what dishes do we kasher from them. Okay, so let's go to all of them. So we said we have, I'll skip irui. Irui isn't so common. We have four ways of kashering. One is libun, and to differentiate from the other libun, so we call it libun chamur, a severe way of libun. We have libun kal, which is a lighter way of libun. We have hag'ala, irui, which we'll explain it. We won't go into a deep, and we have just normal cleaning. And let's go one by one. So libun chamur, or severe libun, is when it's needed when food is in contact with the dish, a dry dish on the fire. For example, meat on a grill, okay, meat on a grill or on a pan, okay. I have a pan, I put it inside the oven, and there's no liquids. For this, we need two things here, two things that make it become libun chamur. First, it is on the heat source, inside the oven, on the fire, on the flame. That's the first thing. Second, there is no liquids. Okay, there's no liquids. If we have only one of them, so we do not need libun chamur. Okay, libun chamur is the most hardest way to kasher. And if we went to the idea of kibol okach polto, if something absorbed by libun chamur, we also try to kasher it on the fire, and we'll explain it after we go over very fast over the different ways. Libun kal is, we'll go to it towards the end, is when hagala can be applied. We'll explain it. Hagala is when food with boiling liquids on the fire. Okay, so it's on something hot, but this time not like libun chamur. We have liquids, oil, water, soup, whatever we have. That's hagala. Iru is pouring hot water on something. We would go to it very, very short, in a very short way. And cleaning is when something touched cold food. Okay, when something touched cold food, for example, I ate cottage cheese by accident on a meat plate. Very simple. We don't need to kasher it. Just clean the plate, wash the plate very well, and that's fine. This happens many, many times in houses, and Baruch Hashem, usually the food isn't so hot. If you have babies and you give them baby food and meat and milk on the same tray, not so good, but just wash the tray and that's it. That's a very easy way of kashering, just cleaning something, and that when there's no heat involved, when it's only cold. Okay, so these are the main categories of kashering, and now we'll go into them one by one and explain how to do each thing and what dishes need to be done in them. I'll Before we go into libun, I'll tell you that I managed already to wreck quite a few pans and frying pans and other grills on it. If you're looking into a way to clean the kitchen, and if you want to buy your wife a new frying pan, so doing libun on a frying pan, that is the best way to buy a new frying pan. And I have quite a good experience, or bad experience, I'm not sure how to call it, in ruining a few dishes. Some of them I did just as an experiment. I took very old dishes. I want to see what happens and how long does it take for it to become kosher, and how long does it take for it to be wrecked. So I did an experiment just to learn about it and all dishes. And a few times I had mistakes. I wasn't paying too much attention to what I'm doing, and they ruined. But we'll get to it in a moment. So when do we do libun? So we said that for dishes that were in contact with food, with a heat source, and there's no liquids, as we mentioned. And for example, is a grill, tray, and a frying pan, according to many authorities. Okay, and the purpose of libun is to burn any remaining food. I'm sure if you ever tried to take your grill from the barbecue and clean it, you've noticed it is very hard to clean a grill from the barbecue. Maybe I'll even say it's impossible to clean the grill from the barbecue. The only way to do it is really to burn everything on it. And that's the idea of libun. Okay, you heat the grill until all the metal is red or white, depending on the coloring you have outside, or until you have sparks coming out of it, or until the outer layer falls. And when we say the outer layer, when it falls, that's the description that Chazal use, and they probably mean not that the metal itself peels, but all of the food which is stuck onto the metal. So until that peels, okay? And when you do libun, you can actually see how all of the food which is stuck to the metal, how it peels. Okay, some of the dishes that need libun, some of them might be ruined when you do libun, like a tray, okay, a pan. Some of them might be ruined, and we don't do libun on it. And in most cases, you can't kasher them. In most cases, you can't kasher, for example, an oven pan. Many cases you can't kasher it. It's all buying a new oven pan, or if it's in an Airbnb and you're using an oven, so kasher the oven itself, and never put food straight on the oven pan, cover it with tin foil or something like that. In very special cases, when the pan is quite expensive or other reasons, when we have other reasons to be a bit more lenient, we'll use what is called libun kal to kasher it. Okay, so how do we do libun? The most common way in a self-cleaning oven is turn on the self-cleaning oven, and that will do the work. Okay, a self-cleaning oven, that's the best job. I think it was about a month ago, I was going to do a barbecue outside, and my gas finished, so I brought everything inside, and then I had a ton of fat dripping into the oven. And we have a self-cleaning. And I said, okay, I'll be lazy. I will not clean the oven. I'll just turn it on self-cleaning. And self-cleaning did the work. It burned everything. It burned everything inside so well that all the oil burnt, and obviously we had smoke in the house, and we had to open all the windows on a cold night and turn on the fans and make sure that all the smoke goes out of the house. But the self-cleaning oven does the work for libun. So anything which you put inside an oven with a self-cleaning system, that does the work for libun. It's kosher. There's no problem with it at all. For Pesach, meat and milk, if you have those special frying pans of cast, I think you call them cast steel frying pans, I think you can put them inside the oven. Also, do a self-clean, is kosher. Don't forget afterwards just to put oil on those frying pans, because I need to have oil on them, and everything is fine. And a regular oven, also you can clean well, heat on the highest heat for half an hour after it reaches the highest heat, but the tray itself, according to many poskim, can't be cleaned. Okay, it can't be cleaned, can't be kashered, so just make sure not to put food on it. As I said beforehand, why can't the trays be cleaned? Okay, why can't the trays be cleaned? And the reason is, if I'll go back to the slide here, as soon as we go inside the category of libun, we go into the most extreme way of libun. And if the most extreme way of libun is about, let's say, 550 or 600 degrees, so everything needs to be 560 degrees, even if we used it only for 450 or for 350. That's according to many poskim. And that's why many pans, they just can't stand the heat of 550 or 600. Okay, and that's why they'll get ruined. Since some poskim say that you don't need to get to the maximum, you just use the same way it was used. So if you use it on an oven with 350, kasher it also in 350. Okay, that's some poskim do hold it. And as I mentioned, in most cases we go by the majority of the poskim. In some cases, and if there's a specific question so you can ask, we go by the other opinions that you don't need to go to the extreme way of libun, but just kasher the same way it was became treif. Okay, so that's for pans. For pans, since they need libun, we prefer to do the most extreme way of libun, which in actual life means you can't really kasher them. In some cases, we say, look, it's a very expensive pan, and there's other reasons here, so just put it in the highest heat that you ever used it, which will be around 450 usually, and then it will be kosher. Okay, so that's the oven. A grill, okay, grill of a barbecue. It happened to me once when I went to an Airbnb, and actually I brought with me a grill, but they had a grill there, and I said, okay, let's kasher it. And they actually had a thermometer on the grill, so I could see how hot it reaches. You turn on all of the grills, it needs to be relatively a warm day. I tried it once on a cold day, and it doesn't work. It doesn't reach the temperature you need to. And when it reaches about 600 degrees, when you leave it there for about half an hour, so the grill is kosher. So the grill is kosher. Another way to do it, if you have a torch with a fire, I'm not sure how you call it. In Hebrew, you call it a kelev gaz, a dog of gas, because it makes noises of barking. So you use this and put it straight on the grill, and after a few minutes, it really becomes red and hot. That's the way to kasher it. In the grill, I kashered, so after I opened, you could see how just all of the fat and everything just burned and fell down. It works. As I said, it will not work from what I tried on a cold day, because then it just doesn't reach the maximum heat. And if you're trying to kasher one of those simple and thin grills, you'll wreck them. You'll ruin them. You need to kasher a thick grill, a very thick one. Okay, so that's about grill. You can put the grill inside a self-clean oven. That's also a way to kasher a grill. And also I did it a few times. Okay, any questions before we move to Hagala about libun? So any questions about libun before we move to Hagala?
Just a clarification question. If I have a frying pan that was used for the wrong thing, it's a Basari frying pan that was used for chalavi, right?
Okay.
So I clean it, and then are you suggesting that I then put that frying pan inside the oven as a way to do libun?
If it's a frying pan, it's a
stainless steel.
What is it?
Stainless
steel, whatever it's called. Yeah, so put it inside the self-clean oven. Most frying pans, I don't think they will survive such a thing. And luckily, we'll discuss frying pans at the end, so we'll have to keep you here until the end of the class.
But it needs to be cleaned before you do that, I would assume.
A frying pan. Wait, let's put it. Generally speaking, we should clean everything before we kasher them. Okay, generally speaking, with libun, with burning, it's not so important. It's good, but it's not so important, and the reason is simple: the heat will just burn everything. Okay, so generally speaking, we want to clean everything, specifically with libun chamur, with such a high heat, like a self-clean oven. The purpose of a self-clean oven is to save you from cleaning the oven, and it burns everything. It just burns everything, and you don't need to clean it. So with libun chamur, it is better to clean, but it is not needed. With Hagala, which we'll get to it in just a moment, it must be cleaned beforehand. But a good question to clarify it. It's better to clean. With libun chamur, it's not necessary, just because everything burns. Everything burns. Okay, and from here, let's move to Hagala. So Hagala, if to try to understand what the word mag'il, okay, Hagala, lo tig'al nafshi etchem, tig'al means to take out, okay, to take out something. And that's the purpose of Hagala, to take out any taste which is absorbed inside the dish. And that's a big difference between Hagala and libun. Hagala is like a deep clean, and libun just the idea of it is to burn everything. Okay, there are quite a few differences in meanings for Pesach. We won't discuss them now, but one of the great differences, as we mentioned, Rabbi Weiss, is that with Hagala we need to clean it beforehand because you can't clean something dirty. With Libun, it burns everything. So even if there's a bit of dirt on it, it will be burnt. According to most poskim, the pot must be on the fire itself. When I say fire, I'm also mean any electric other source or of heat. Okay, the pot needs to be on the fire itself, and the water must be boiling. Okay, so if we kasher many dishes one after each other, we need to give a few seconds between different dishes so they can the water will come and boil again. How to do Hagala? So the first thing, as we mentioned, is to clean the pot well. Okay, it can't be kashered when it is dirty. It can't be. Okay, that's a simple idea. Even it needs to be cleaned from rust and other things that might be on the pot. It is better to wait 24 hours before kashering. And how do we do it? We boil a big pot of water. Okay, and for cutlery, I found it very easy. If you have a kettle, if you're Israeli, and you have to have tea if you're Israeli, because you can't take the coffee from the machines here. I have a problem I can see. One moment. Okay, so if for cutlery we could just take a kettle, open it so it really boils, and add a bit of soap. Can you add a bit of soap for the pot? Okay, place the dishes inside for a few seconds, and after you take just a few seconds, it shouldn't be inside for too long, about 3-5 seconds. It should be inside, and then wash with cold water. Very important for obvious reasons. I didn't do that mistake, but in the army, so my soldiers did that mistake. They kashered glass dishes and then rinsed it with cold water, and they lost the point of kashering the dishes since the glass cracked and was destroyed. Okay, so if you're kashering glass, do not rinse it with cold water right after you kasher it. But if you're kashering metal, so you can rinse it with cold water. Okay, very important to know, a dish can be kashered in stages. Okay, for example, if you have a long knife, if you have a big pot, you can kasher only half of it, take it out, and then kasher the other half. And that is very useful. Every now and then, I'm not sure but every few months probably, I need to kasher some sort of spoon or knife or something in my house. And the easiest way is just to take a kettle of water, fill it up with water, open it up so it continues to boil, add a bit of soap, let it boil, and then to take half of the knife, or take the knife, put it into the middle of it, take it out, turn it around, put the other half inside, and that's the best way. That's best and easiest way to kasher cutlery. In pots, you have to kasher inside a bigger pot, and if you have a very big pot that you need to kasher, so there's two ways of doing it. One is libun kal, which we'll get to it in just a moment, and the other way is or just letting it overboil, like filling it up until the end and letting it boil over itself, or taking some sort of dough or something and putting around it, and then it boils over it. Okay, so that's if you have a very big pot you need to kasher. So this is about Hagala. That's probably the most common way of kashering dishes in the house. And here are the stages, as we said. I won't read it again. And before we get to Libun Kal, see if there's any questions about it. So we can ask. If not, we'll go to the next, probably last stage. No? Okay, so great. Let's go to the last topic of Libun Kal. Libun Kal is defined by warming up the whatever it is until paper, straw, or something on the other side of it will burn. Okay, so until something on the other side of it will burn. It depends on what you have and how strong your heat is. I once tried to do a big frying pan on gas. It took about 5 minutes. Once, if you do it here with this gas burner, it can take even less than that, maybe half a minute. It really depends on what you're using, but it's very easy to check. You take the pot, put it on the source of heat, put a bit of paper on the other side of it, and when this paper starts to become black, so that's done for the libun kal. The idea of libun kal, it burns the food inside, but it's not a deep burn like libun chamur. and it works for whatever we need hagala, we can use libun kal. Whatever we need hagala, we need libun kal. Usually it's easier to do hagala, usually. But sometimes we need to do libun kal, or because of technical reasons, or because the halacha requires us to do libun kal, and here we're getting to the frying pan in just a moment. Okay, so then we do libun kal. I'll give you an example where we can do libun kal. If I have a very big pot, and it's I'm lazy. Okay, I'm lazy. Also, I did it a few times. Instead of taking water and boiling it and making sure it flows over it and gets cleaned, I just put it on the pot, turn it over, put it on the fire, turn it on, put a piece of paper on it until it gets the paper starts to get black. I'm warning you now. If you have a silver or nirosta pot, it does change its color a bit, and it loses its silver color. Okay, so you can do it for experiments. I recommend doing it if you really need it, but don't do it, as I say, don't do it at home, unless you really, really need it. Okay, for libun kal. Unless it's a frying pan. For a frying pan, we'll get to it in a moment. Okay, for most poskim, it doesn't count as libun chamor. Okay, it does not count as libun chamor. When we need to do libun chamor, we need to do libun chamor. We can't do libun kal instead. So when can we use it? One is when the pot isn't cleaned well. Okay, we said beforehand that the main difference between libun and hagala is hagala cleans and libun burns. And to do hagala, I need to clean the pot. But what if I can't clean the pot? It's rusty on it. There's something burnt on it. I can't get into the way where the handle is. All sorts of reasons why I can't clean the pot. So then I can do libun kal. That's a very common case. And a very common case, and here finally we're answering the question of the frying pan. A frying pan is something in between. It's between hagala and libun. Okay, on one hand, it's on the heat. It has food inside it, but it doesn't have a lot of liquids. It has only a bit of oil, usually or butter or whatever it is. So it doesn't have a lot of liquid in it. So it's somewhere there between hagala and libun. And we have an argument between the rabbis. How do we kasher a frying pan? Is it like any pot that just needs hagala, fill it up with boiling water, a bit of soap, let it overflow, and it's kosher, and that's it? Or does it need libun, which means put it in an oven for 600 degrees, and if you have non-stick frying pan, you could say goodbye to your frying pan. Okay, so that's the argument between the rabbis. Is a frying pan like hagala or libun? That's an argument. We saw another argument beforehand. We asked questions. Inside libun, do I need to go to the extreme side of libun of 600 degrees? Or can I go to the normal way of using the frying pan, which means on a heat, on a stove with, it reaches 300, 350, maybe 400. It does not reach 600 degrees when I use a regular frying pan. So since we have those two arguments with a frying pan, okay, first, what does it need? Does it need hagala or libun? And second, even if it needs libun, do I need to go to the extreme way of libun, or can I be lenient? So since we have those two arguments, according to many poskim, many rabbis, you can kasher a frying pan by libun. Okay, kasher a frying pan by libun. And how do we kasher it? We turn it, it's easier to turn it over. We turn it over the heat, source of the heat. You put on top of it, on the other side, you put a piece of paper, a tissue or something like that, and turn on the heat. And as soon as the tissue starts burning, so the frying pan is kosher. Okay, the frying pan is kosher. So that's according to most poskim. That's quite an easy way to kasher a frying pan. I must say that according to some poskim, a frying pan needs libun chamor, and most frying pans will be ruined by libun chamor. And according to them, you can't kasher a frying pan. Okay, but since, as we said, there's an argument here of two arguments how to kasher a frying pan, so you can do libun kal. One thing we should do before it is wait 24 hours before kashering the frying pan. And here we had another reason to be more lenient. I also waited 24 hours. There's a question if it needs hagala or libun. Even if it needs libun, maybe libun kal is enough. And so therefore you can do libun kal. Okay, that's how Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, the very known posek in Israel, that is his psak. Okay, so that's about libun kal. As I said, you heat it up until the other side of it if you put paper on it, it starts to burn. I'm not sure exactly what temperature it is. I'll ask once the rabbi, and he told me it should be around probably 230, 240 degrees, probably, more or less. But since it's so easy to check it, just take a tissue and see when it starts to become black. So that's enough. Okay, before we go to the summary, any questions about Libun Kal? No? Great. Okay, so we'll go to Dan. Did I answer your question about the frying pan?
Yes, but it brings up one other question.
Okay.
What pot am I koshering it in? Am I koshering it in the, if it's a fleshik pan that was accidentally used for halavi, am I koshering it in a fleshik pot, or am I koshering it in a halavi pot?
Okay, so that's a good question. Got to do with Hagala. That's a good question. We will answer it in a moment. I'm just reminding that kashering the frying pan, you don't kasher by Hagala in boiling water. You kasher it with libun kal, which means putting it on the stove, okay, on the heat source, turning on the heat, and putting a piece of tissue on it until the tissue becomes black. Okay, so the frying pan, you do not kasher inside a different pot. You don't kasher inside a different pot. How do you kasher cutlery? Okay, how do you kasher cutlery when you want them to be fleshy? Let's say the fleshy cutlery that touched milk. How do you kasher them? That is why we wait 24 hours, plus we put soap inside the pot before we kasher them. Okay, so that prevents the problem of meat, milk that you asked. Okay, so what I like to do is, if the forks or knives or cutlery, if it needs to be meat, I'll put it inside the meat pot. If it needs to be a milchik, I'll put it inside a dairy pot. And waiting for 24 hours plus putting soap will prevent any problems if by accident I mixed up, I took meat and parv and fleshy cutlery and put them together. So waiting 24 hours plus putting soap inside the water prevents any problems with Hagala. But thank you very much for the question and making sure we clarify it. Okay, so here's just the last slide, just to summarize it. A microwave. Sorry, I forgot to explain how to kasher a microwave. It's also very easy. We'll discuss it in a minute. Hagala, it's good for pots, cutlery. Libun kal, it's good for pots with rust. Knives, which is hard to clean them if they have like teeth there. Frying pans, according to many poskim. And libun chamur, it's for grills and pans. And as we mentioned many times beforehand, libun chamur might ruin some of the things, and therefore they can't be kashered. The last thing we'll talk about, it's a microwave. It's a very, very common question. If you go to Airbnb, hotel, or everything, and you get to a microwave, you see there's a microwave. What do you do with it? First, the best thing will be whatever food you put inside to cover it. Okay, to cover it. But not always we have how to cover the food, and not always we want to cover the food because of health reasons or other reasons. So luckily, a microwave, if it doesn't have a heating element inside, it can be kashered very easily. First, clean it well. And make sure the top of the microwave, from the inside on the top, it's clean. The last time I kashered the microwave was about 2 weeks ago. I put inside the boiling water. I didn't understand why it's always dirty and there's more oil coming out, until I just looked inside, looked at the top of the microwave. It was filthy. So clean the microwave well. Place a mug with water and a bit of soap. Okay, a bit of soap helps a lot for many solving problems. Bring to boil, which means turn it on for about 2 or 3 minutes, depending on the microwave, depending on the size of the cup. And that's kosher. Recommended, before you take out the mug, wait a few minutes. The mug is boiling, okay? Don't take out the mug. The plate will also be boiling. It has on it boiling water. Don't wash the plate in cold water right after you kasher it. Let it a few minutes to cool down. That's for technical reasons. It will crack. And for halachically reasons, don't place food straight on the glass, okay? Have a plate between the glass, have something between the glass and the food. Okay, so that's about kashering microwaves. Very easy to kasher microwaves, and if you go to vacations or other places, it's a very, very common question. That's about kashering. I hope we managed to touch most of the things and most of the questions. Next week is the last topic in this series, and then the Bachurim will be starting another topic of Hafashat Chala, the laws of Hafashat Chala. So you're more than welcome. Next week we'll discuss how to toivel dishes and what dishes need to be toivel. Bezrat Hashem, hope to see you next week with a good bserot and a great atmosphere around us.
תודה רבה.
בשמחה רבה, כל טוב.
עוד כל טוב.